The entire galaxy felt different on the day the ancient prison moon woke again. For thousands of years, that moon had floated in cold silence, covered in dust and dead stone. No one cared about it. No one visited it. Everyone believed nothing living could survive there. But early one morning, sensors across distant star systems detected a heartbeat coming from deep inside the moon. It was slow, heavy, and strong enough to shake satellites. Scientists everywhere panicked, and fleets from powerful alien empires rushed toward the silent moon. They did not know what was inside. They only knew one thing. Whatever had woken up was not small. As the first alien ships landed, the ground on the moon cracked open like dry glass. A long, painful cry echoed from below, a sound so powerful that it pushed ships back and sent soldiers falling to their knees. More cracks spread across the surface until a giant hand broke through the rock, an enormous, glowing hand larger than a battleship. Dust filled the sky as a massive figure slowly rose from underground. She stood taller than mountains, her body covered in old chains that broke one by one as she moved. Her eyes opened for the first time in centuries. They were bright like stars, but full of fear and confusion. Every alien froze, stunned by her size and presence. No one had ever seen a creature like her. The giantess took her first steps, each one shaking the entire moon. She did not speak. She only looked around like someone trying to remember where they were. Aliens aimed their weapons, but before they could fire, she raised her hand and released a burst of raw, uncontrolled energy. Mountains collapsed. Weapons melted into liquid metal. Ships fell from the sky like broken toys. She was not attacking. She simply did not understand her own power. She cried again, a sound of fear, not anger, and everything around her shook. Entire armies retreated. Even the strongest species in the galaxy understood that nothing could stop her. News spread as fast as light. Every screen, every channel, every hologram showed the same image, a giantess awakening after thousands of years. The galaxy was terrified. Some believed she would destroy planets. Others believed she was a lost goddess from ancient times. Many prepared their weapons, ready for war. But one human ship, far from all the chaos, received the emergency signal too. Inside that small ship was a calm and quiet engineer named Evan Hale. Unlike the others, he did not panic. He read the report again and again, studying the strange energy signature coming from the giantess. For some reason he could not explain, he felt something familiar in it. Something almost gentle. Evan offered to land on the moon alone. Alien commanders called him insane. They shouted that humans were too small, too weak, too simple to face a creature like her. But Evan only nodded quietly and prepared his small landing craft. He believed the giantess was not evil. He believed she was scared. And sometimes, he thought, even the most powerful beings needed someone who did not fear them. As he landed on the moon, dust and broken rocks surrounded him. Every step he took made his heart beat faster, but he did not stop. He walked toward the huge figure who stood in silence at the center of the crater she had created. The giantess turned her head slowly, sensing him. Her shadow covered him completely. The ground shook as she stepped closer. Every viewer watching the live feed held their breath. Soldiers screamed at Evan through the comms to run away. But he did not move. He lifted his hand gently, showing he was not a threat. The giantess stared at the small human, confused by his calmness. The air around them trembled as her power rose, ready to explode again. Everyone believed Evan would die in that moment. But then, something unexpected happened. The giantess stopped. Her energy faded. Her breathing slowed. For the first time since she broke free, she did not shake the ground. She simply looked at the tiny human with curious, soft eyes. And in that silent moment, the entire galaxy realized the truth: the most powerful being alive had paused, because of one human. The giantess stood completely still, her enormous frame casting a long shadow over the broken landscape. Evan did not move. He only kept his hand raised, hoping she understood he was not there to harm her. For a moment, everything was silent. The dust slowly settled around them, and even the wind seemed afraid to make a sound. Billions of eyes across the galaxy watched the live broadcast, waiting for the human to be crushed in a single step or blown away by her uncontrollable power. But instead, the giantess lowered her head slightly, as if trying to understand the tiny figure standing before her. She took one slow step toward him, and the ground vibrated under her weight. Evan felt the shockwave nearly push him over, but he stood firm. Her massive face came closer, her glowing eyes scanning him with deep confusion. She raised her hand, her fingers larger than entire buildings, and everyone watching believed this was the end. Weapons across hundreds of ships locked onto her instantly. But when her hand hovered above Evan, it trembled. For the first time, she hesitated. A creature powerful enough to melt metal with a scream was now shaking because she did not want to hurt the small human who showed no fear. Evan slowly reached out and placed his hand against the tip of her finger. His touch was nothing compared to her size. It was like a drop of water touching a mountain. And yet, the moment he touched her, her entire body reacted. The glowing lines across her skin softened. The cold blue light in her eyes flickered gently. Her breathing, once loud enough to shake rocks, became softer. Waves of her dangerous energy calmed, as if his human touch broke a storm inside her. It was unbelievable. Alien scientists began shouting in disbelief. Their scanners showed something impossible. Her energy levels dropped by almost 90% the moment Evan touched her. The giantess pulled her hand back slightly, looking at her own fingers as if she did not understand what she felt. She whispered something, her voice deep and echoing through the moon like thunder rolling across the sky. The word was small, quiet, and broken, like someone learning how to speak again after centuries. Warm, that one word shocked everyone. It was clear she remembered how to speak, but her voice sounded old and unused. Evan nodded gently and took a slow step closer. She watched him closely, but she did not pull away. She lowered her hand again, allowing him to place his palm against her skin once more. Higher commanders panicked. They believed the giantess was bonding with the human, something they could not control. "Separate them immediately," one shouted across the comms. "If she bonds with him, she will follow only him." Another voice screamed, "She is too powerful. A human must not control her." But Evan continued ignoring their orders. He could see the fear in her eyes, the same fear that had caused her earlier destruction. She was not a monster. She was a lonely being who had been locked away in darkness for thousands of years with no one to guide her. The giantess slowly sat down, shaking the ground as she lowered her enormous form. She placed her hands on the ground gently, careful not to break anything. She seemed calmer now, breathing slower, watching Evan with quiet curiosity. For the first time, she did not feel like a danger. She felt like someone seeking help. Evan spoke softly, telling her he was there to understand, not to harm. Her eyes softened even more, and she nodded slightly, a small but clear sign she understood. But the peace did not last long. Warships circled above them, closing in. Their engines glowed brightly, preparing for attack. Evan knew what was coming. The alien leaders were not ready to trust the giantess or the human who calmed her. A loud voice echoed from the sky. "Human, step away from the creature. Now." The giantess lifted her head, her eyes glowing brighter as she sensed the danger. Evan quickly raised his hand, trying to calm her again. She watched him closely. She trusted him. And that trust made the alien leaders nervous. Part 2 ended with hundreds of weapons locked onto them and the giantess lowering her hand protectively around Evan, refusing to let anyone take him away. The sky above the shattered moon filled with hundreds of alien warships. Their engines glowed red, blue, and silver as they aimed every weapon they had at the giantess. From orbit, commanders shouted orders, their voices shaking with fear more than anger. They did not understand why the most destructive being in the galaxy was sitting calmly beside one small human. Their fear twisted into suspicion, and suspicion became hatred. In their eyes, Evan was no longer a brave volunteer. He was now a dangerous influence. Someone who could control the Giantess. Someone they needed to remove. Evan slowly stepped back, not because he feared her, but because he sensed the tension rising around them. The Giantess lowered her hand like a protective wall, preventing any harm from reaching him. Ship scanned her energy again, expecting chaos. But instead of rising, her power remained low, something that had never happened before. She was stable because of him. The galaxy had no idea what to do with that truth. Soldiers on the ground began forming lines, their weapons shaking in their hands. Some looked confused, unable to understand why this giant girl protected a human instead of crushing him. The Giantess sensed their fear. Her breathing grew faster. The blue glow on her skin became brighter, trembling as if something inside her wanted to break free again. Evan quickly moved in front of her massive foot and raised his arms. "It's okay," he said softly, even though she was hundreds of times larger than him. She leaned forward slowly and listened. Her breath brushed against him like a warm wind. The trembling stopped. Her power settled again. Evan's calm voice was more effective than any alien technology. But the alien commanders did not see this as a miracle. They saw it as danger. "Human influence detected," one shouted. "She responds only to him," another yelled. "If he commands her, she could destroy our fleets in seconds." Their fear blinded them. A loud alarm echoed across the battlefield as warships began charging a weapon designed only for emergencies, a weapon capable of killing a star beast. No one had used it in centuries because it was too destructive. The Giantess felt the energy building in the sky. She lifted her head and looked up as the clouds burned with rising heat. Her eyes changed. Fear returned. The same fear that once shattered mountains. She reached for Evan quickly, scooping him up with her hand before he could react. Evan held onto her massive thumb, shouting, "Stop. It's okay. Don't attack them." But she did not hear him this time. Her survival instincts were stronger than words. She stood up, her full size stretching above the highest cliffs. Her power surged like a storm waiting to explode. Rocks floated off the ground. The air crackled. Aliens panicked. This was exactly the nightmare they feared. On the command ship, the weapon reached full charge. A beam of pure white energy formed above the fleet, ready to fire. Evan knew one hit would kill both him and the Giantess. He had no time to think. He climbed up her arm, using the glowing lines on her skin like steps. She looked at him in confusion as he reached her shoulder, balancing himself against her neck. He shouted her name, hoping she understood. "Valera. Look at me." Her eyes shifted toward him suddenly. The moment she saw him, her power froze again. Like a storm halted midair. Evan pressed his hand against the side of her neck, a single, small touch against an endless surface of glowing skin. She exhaled slowly, like a frightened child trying to calm down. The destructive energy around her vanished. The floating rocks fell. The air became still. She lowered her hand beneath him, letting him climb safer. The weapon above them misfired. The sudden drop in her power confused its sensors. Instead of firing, the beam scattered into the sky uselessly. The commanders were furious. He neutralized her energy. That human is more dangerous than she is. Find them both. Capture them. Evan looked at the Giantess and knew what they would try next. They were going to take him away from her, and she would panic again. And if she panicked again, nothing could stop the destruction. He placed his hand gently on her cheek. "We need to leave," he whispered. Valera nodded slowly, her enormous eyes soft with trust. She lifted Evan safely and ran toward the distant mountains, leaving the armies and fleets behind. Every step shook the ground, but she did not stop. Behind them, the entire galaxy watched, not knowing if they had just witnessed the birth of peace, or the start of a war. And this time, the galaxy was afraid of the human. Deep in the shadow of the mountain range, the giantess finally slowed down. Her heavy breaths echoed across the stone walls as she stepped inside a narrow canyon. Even though the space was huge by any normal scale, it still felt small around her. She carefully set Evan down on a ledge and lowered herself to the ground, curling her legs close so she would not crush anything. Her massive hands trembled slightly, and her glowing eyes dimmed as if the fear from the battlefield still clung to her. Evan sat on the rock, exhausted but calm. He watched her carefully. For a moment, she looked less like a monster and more like a lonely girl who had been running from danger her entire life. Her breathing steadied whenever she looked at him. Whenever he was near, the glowing energy on her skin softened like gentle light instead of a storm. Evan noticed it again, the same pattern from earlier. Her power responded to emotions. When she felt fear, it rose like fire. When she felt calm, it faded like a dying wave. He stood up and walked closer to her. She leaned forward slightly, lowering her head so she could see him better. Her expression looked curious but unsure. Evan raised his hand again. She hesitated, then slowly placed her fingertip near him. When he touched her, the canyon walls stopped vibrating. Her breath softened instantly. A soft glow moved across her skin, not harsh like before but warm and steady. She whispered a single word, her voice deep but gentle. Safe. Evan understood that she did not feel safe because she was powerful. She felt safe because he was near. He began speaking to her, using simple words and slow sentences. She listened like someone trying to learn a forgotten language. Over time, she revealed small pieces of her memory. Thousands of years ago, she had been part of a powerful species. Their bodies grew stronger with age, but her strength grew too fast. Her people feared that she would become a world breaker, someone capable of destroying an entire planet without meaning to. So they locked her away, hoping time would teach her control. Instead, centuries passed in darkness, and she forgot the difference between fear and strength. Evan listened patiently. He realized something important, something no alien commander understood. She did not want to destroy anything. She wanted to stop herself from doing harm. Her fear was the real danger, not her strength. And humans, in some strange way, carried a calming effect her body responded to. Their energy was different from every other species in the galaxy. Maybe it was biology. Maybe it was something deeper. But whatever it was, it allowed her to breathe without fear. While Evan continued talking to her, none of them noticed the small drone hovering above the canyon. Alien trackers had found them. The drone silently recorded everything and sent the information back to the fleets. Commanders watched the footage with shock and confusion. The giantess sitting peacefully with a human by her side was something the galaxy had never imagined. Some felt hope. Others felt fear. A squad of alien soldiers moved toward the canyon, determined to capture Evan and separate him from the giantess. They believed removing the human influence would weaken her again. They marched between the rocks, following the signal on their trackers. Evan saw the shadows first and quickly stepped forward. Stay calm, he whispered to Valera, touching her hand. She nodded gently and tried to lower her power. But when the soldiers emerged with weapons pointed at Evan, something inside her reacted. She stood up fast, the canyon trembling violently. Her eyes flared with bright blue light as fear surged inside her again. Rocks began to crack. Dust filled the air. The soldiers panicked and fired warning shots. Evan ran toward her foot and pressed his hand against her skin. It's okay. Look at me, he shouted. She froze on the spot, her glowing energy breaking apart like waves hitting a wall. The soldiers stared in disbelief. One human touch had stopped her from destroying them all. Valera slowly lowered herself again, watching Evan closely. The soldiers, confused and shaken, backed away without attacking. They had seen the truth with their own eyes, his presence saved them. Not their weapons. As the sun set behind the canyon walls, Evan realized something deeper. He was not controlling her. He was helping her control herself. And somewhere far above, alien commanders received a message from their scouts. Sir, the Giantess listens only to the human. And without him, she cannot stop her power. The galaxy now understood something terrifying. If they tried to separate them, they would destroy everything. The night sky above the mountains glowed with the lights of thousands of alien ships. They surrounded the entire region, forming a ring of metal and fear around the canyon. Every species watched from their screens, wondering what would happen next. Some hoped for peace. Most expected war. But none of them understood the strange truth unfolding between the human and the giantess. Evan stood beside Valara's massive hand, feeling her trembling again. She could sense the armies closing in. She could hear the buzzing of their engines. And even though she tried to stay calm, fear crept through her like a cold wind. Evan touched her fingers again, letting her feel the warmth of his presence. Valera exhaled slowly, her glowing blue lines softening, but not completely. She knew danger was near. The aliens wanted to separate them, not because she was a threat, but because they feared how close she was to a human. They believed Evan had too much influence. They believed no human should have this power. Dozens of voices echoed across the comms, demanding Evan surrender immediately. He ignored every order. He looked up at Valera, whose enormous eyes reflected the stars and the fire of distant ships. Suddenly, a beam of light hit the canyon floor. An alien general appeared through a projection. His voice was cold and sharp. Human, step away from the creature. If you refuse, we will use force. Valera tensed instantly, her body glowing with fear. Evan shook his head at the projection. If you attack her, she will lose control. She does not want to fight. She only wants safety. But the general did not listen. She is a danger to every world. We cannot trust her. We cannot trust you. The projection vanished. The fleets began shifting into attack formation. Engines roared across the mountains. The light in the sky grew brighter. Valara's hands curled into fists. The fear inside her rose again, shaking the canyon walls. Her glow brightened dangerously. Rocks slid from the cliffs. Evan acted quickly. He stepped forward and pressed both his hands against her thumb. Her breath caught. Her glow froze mid-flash. She stared at him, confused but listening. Valera, he whispered firmly, you are not alone. I am here. No one will hurt you. Look at me. Her giant eyes softened. She lowered her head slowly until her face was almost level with him. Thousands of soldiers watched in shock as the most powerful being in the galaxy knelt before a human, not in fear, but in trust. The fleets hesitated. No one had ever seen anything like it. Evan climbed onto her palm and stood tall, facing the sky. If you want to talk, he shouted toward the ships, talk to us, not through threats. The alien council appeared across every screen, their faces filled with hesitation. They had expected a monster. But now they saw something else. A giantess shaking with fear, and a human calming her with nothing but his voice and his touch. One council member finally spoke. Why does she listen to you? Evan did not lie. Because I treat her like a person, not a weapon. Silence spread across the fleets. Valera slowly rose to her full height, holding Evan safely in her hand. She looked up at the sky, her glow steady, her voice deep and clear. I choose the human. Her declaration echoed through the mountains like a pulse of thunder. Every species heard it. Every commander froze. She was not speaking of war. She was choosing peace. Choosing trust. Choosing someone who saw her as more than a creature of destruction. The council realized they had two choices: attack and risk the destruction of half the galaxy, or trust the bond forming before their eyes. After a long, tense moment, the council lowered their weapons. The fleets backed away. The threat slowly faded from the sky. The giantess relaxed for the first time since she awoke, and the glow across her skin softened like a calm ocean. In the days that followed, the galaxy signed a new treaty. Humans would work with her species to teach control and peace. Evan was chosen as the first ambassador, the only one who could stand beside Valera without fear. Together, they took the first steps toward a new future where power did not mean danger, and where a human's gentle touch could calm the strongest force in the galaxy. As the story closed, Valera lifted Evan onto her shoulder. The stars reflected in her eyes as she looked at him with quiet gratitude. Sometimes, the smallest touch truly controlled the greatest power. And sometimes, the galaxy needed a human to remind them of that.